Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 34th episode of Husky Dash. I'm your host, Nathan Mathisen, and today I'm going to be starting off the show talking about what to look for at the spring game this upcoming weekend, including looking at the position battle of the QBs as well as the running back room. Next, I'll look ahead to one of my favorite days of the year, the NFL draft, and look at which Huskies might be being drafted and where they might be going. And then to close out the show, I'll be keeping it in the NFL and looking at what former Husky that's currently in the NFL might be having a breakout upcoming season. So before getting into the first segment, though, a bit of just update. ZTF tore his Achilles at spring practice, so he'll be out for probably the rest of this upcoming season. It was 6 to 10 months, Jimmy Lake said, but an Achilles injury is usually more like the 10 months. And that's a huge blow not only for the Huskies and their performance this upcoming season, but also just ZTF's future, as he clearly was probably looking to prove that his last year's 4-game, 7-sack season wasn't just a fluke and that he's capable of doing that year in and year out. And had he been able to follow up that 2020 season with another great year, he likely could have been an early 2022 first round pick in the NFL draft. So it's really tragic for him. Now, getting into that first segment, the spring game preview. And obviously, everyone always is intrigued with the QB position, especially when nobody knows who the starter is, like the case for the Huskies it is. And from what I've heard from practice and from what I've seen from practice when I went, there's really not one guy in the QB room who's won the job. Not one of them has looked excellent or just yards or miles ahead of the next guy. But there is a clear drop off in performance from the number 2 QB to the number 3 QB. And unfortunately, that number 3 QB is probably Sam Heward, the true freshman, who a lot of people probably hoped started this year. As he's a 5-star, they want to see him for as much time as possible, help him develop. And yeah, he might still start. I'm just saying that so far in spring practice, he's been the clear cut third best QB on the roster. I mean, he's looked like a true freshman, which is what he is. He was playing high school football just a couple months ago. And what's really looked poor from Heward, I guess you could say, is just his composure. He hasn't been as composed as the other quarterbacks, which again, that's fully to be expected with the other guys being Dylan Morris, who is in his third year at UW. He started all 4 games last year, so he's played college football before. And then there's graduate transfer Patrick O'Brien, who's actually in his 6th year of college football. He spent his first 2 years at Nebraska, and then he spent his past 3 at Colorado State. Another guy who's got in-game experience. Well, Heward, of course, has no in-game experience, which is why in these scrimmages from the practices, he hasn't looked as composed and hasn't been able to stay in the pocket as easily and tends to kind of run out and panic sometimes. But another piece to note, just not an excuse for Heward, but something to mention is he has been practicing with the third string guys, which that goes both ways, as it means he's going up against the third string defense, which should be easier. But so far, in what I've seen, is his third string O line got beat a lot by the third string defensive line, which caused him to be under pressure and never be comfortable in the pocket, which as a young QB, that can be tough to stand in there and make a great pass while you got all these bodies all over you. And then as far as between just O'Brien and Morris, I haven't really seen too much that separates them. They're very close. They've both had throws that look great. They've also both had throws and just decisions that are very poor. So that's going to be something to really focus on during spring. I think they'll probably both be I mean, if you saw Jimmy Lake said that they drafted teams, they have the team set, and they're actually going to be playing a real game. So I'm assuming the starting quarterbacks for each side is going to be Morris on one side and O'Brien on the other side. So it's going to be really interesting to see which one performs the best in the most game like situation that they've had all spring so far. Now, another position to really focus on is the running back. And I talked about the running back position on a show a couple weeks ago, and really not much has changed. There's still just rotating the four main running backs at spring practice like I thought they would. And those four are, of course, Kamari Pleasant, Sean McGrew, Cameron Davis, and Richard Newton. Jimmy Lake's clearly not tipping his hat on which one he's going to be rolling out as the lead back this upcoming season. And I think that's also probably just because he doesn't know which one's going to be the starting running back as of next season. As all four of them, I think, are capable of being starting backs. I'm not saying all four of them are excellent running backs. I think they're all very similar in their skill level. It's just about which style running back you want and which potential you look towards for them to have in the future. And right here, I'm actually going to be looking at the pros of each one of these backs. So I'll just start with Kamari Pleasant. And Kamari Pleasant is in his sixth year at UW. He was one of those guys who returned for another year after being a senior last year. And he's got plenty of experience. He's, as I said, sixth year. And last year, however, was probably his best year. And really his year, he's kind of broke out. Not saying he broke out, but he actually showed something. In the 4 games last year, he had 34 carries, 144 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4.2 yards per carry. Pretty good stats. He also had 8 catches for 66 yards. And really, what changed, if you want to figure out why he had such a better year last year than he had in any of his prior years at UW, I think it has to do with what he did in the offseason. He really pushed himself, trained hard. He made an effort to bulk up. He wanted to get bigger, wanted to get stronger. He also was a better receiving back last season, which is a little unique for his size at being 6'2", I think it is, or 6'1". Don't know his height exactly, but he's about 225, 230. So being a good receiver at that size is really helpful to have, as it makes him more than just a one-dimensional power back. But really, that kind of leads into one of the reasons that he could be a favorite to start next year is because of the style that his body size allows him to do. It allows him to be a physical, up the middle between the tackles running back. And Jimmy Lake's a guy who wants to pound the ball down the opposing team's throat. With a big back, you can do that. Now, transitioning from a big back to the smallest back in Sean McGrew, who also is a sixth-year Husky. Last year, McGrew had 43 carries, 227 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5.3 yards per carry. Basically led the team in all those statistics last year. The reason why he would be the starter is because he's shown the most. Pleasant, even though he's the same year as McGrew, he's only had 97 carries compared to the 165 that Sean McGrew has had in his career. Last year, the last full season, 2019, McGrew had 55 carries for 342 yards. McGrew has shown the coaching staff what he can do at running back, which is good and bad. They'll know what they'll get from him, but then they also probably know that he doesn't have much more to offer. He's been the same thing year in and year out. He's a guy that can get you short bursts, but the big question with him is, can his size hold up? Can he be an every down back? I'm not too sure about that. That's going to be the question he'll have to prove to the coaches to allow him to be that lead back. Now, next up to talk about is Cameron Davis. Now, Cameron Davis is the youngest of the backs, and he's a guy who's gotten a lot of hype. A lot of people want him to start They saw bursts of him last year. He had the least amount of carries out of the four backs with only 15. He did, however, play in all four games, so that's good. Got good playing experience. He had 15 carries, 67 yards, and five catches for 26. Now, Davis is the youngest back. He might have the most burst out of the four and just the highest ceiling out of the four, with him being the youngest. Less tread on his tires. Running backs, they don't last as long. That's a pro for him, really. And just at 6 feet tall, 205 pounds, he's got that ideal college running back body, to the point where he can run up the middle, he can run on the edges, he can run any play. And now the last back to look at is Richard Newton. He's really the biggest question mark. I'd say he's a guy who you could say disappointed last year. His redshirt season, he had a excellent year in 2019. 117 carries, 498 yards, 10 touchdowns. He was on the watch list for the Doak Walker Alert. He was a preseason All Pac-12 second team member 2020. A lot of hype leading up. And then, of course, in the 2020 season, he got off to a good start. You could have said you wanted more from him, but overall, in the first two games, he had 23 carries, 122 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, two touchdowns too, including a huge 50 or something 60-yard run to really end the game against Arizona. However, after those first two games, they went to Utah week 3. Where was Richard Newton? He never got on the field. He was on the sideline the whole time. Week 4, more the same. Newton did not get a touch, did not get on the field. That's really why there's a big question mark around him this season, and people are curious about him because a lot of people were like me last year. They thought he was the best back on the team. I still think he's the best back on the team. I mean, he showed it his first year really playing for the Huskies. He had better statistics than Sean McGrew or Kamari Pleasant did in any of their 5 years before. So just with that, I don't know why he sat the last two games, but if whatever that issue is gone, then I think he should be the lead back because he has shown the most. All right. So that's about all for that topic on spring football. Now time to really get into the NFL, talking about that, with the NFL draft taking place tomorrow at, I believe, 5 o'clock. So the Huskies have 4 guys that will likely hear their names called in the first couple of days. Those 4 are Levi Onwuzurike, Joe Tryon, Elijah Molden, and Keith Taylor. So sorry for that. So where will those 4 guys go? Well, I'll say they'll probably go between pick 26 and pick 70 would be my prediction. The first guy going late first, while the last guy going in the early 3rd round. But I mean, really, it could be someone could slip easily and go middle 3rd, late 3rd. I don't know, 4th, maybe, depending on how the draft shapes up. But overall, it's really tough to predict, especially with guys like Onwuzurike and Tryon, and guys just like him, those guys who didn't play last season. They opted out. You don't really look at film as much on them because it's been a year. You can't rely on that film as much because they've been training nonstop in the off season. So the teams will be looking for that in individual workouts or I guess when they went to their pro days, because I'm not sure if they actually have an individual workouts, but when they talk with them clearly, that'll be a talking point on why they decided to opt out, what they've been doing to train in the off season. Now, I'm no mock draft expert, but if I were to pick a spot for each of these guys, I think the first guy off the board might be Joe Tryon. And that might be at pick 27 to the Ravens. Now, Ravens lost Matt Judon in the offseason, the pass rusher. So why not replace it with a guy like Joe Tryon? A guy who's a very athletic pass rusher, runs a 4.56 at the pro day for the Huskies, He was about 6'5", 260 pounds, which is actually very similar to former Baltimore Ravens legend Terrell Suggs, who was a little shorter, 6'3", but exact same weight at 260. Very similar in skill and size with being pass rush specialists who can use their speed as well as just strength to get around smaller offensive tackles, and then bigger offensive tackles, like I said, use their speed. And so that might be a good spot for try on the Ravens at pick 27. Next up for the Huskies, I think goes is Levi Onwuzurike. And surprisingly, actually, or shockingly, the very next pick I think he could go, number 28 to the New Orleans Saints. And that's another thing is just the Saints lost these defensive linemen. They lost Trey Henderson. They lost Sheldon Rankings. They need to replace these pass rush and interior defensive linemen. And who better to do that than with Onwuzurike? Onwuzurike, I'll say, never put up huge statistical numbers at UW. 2019, he had 45 tackles, 6 tackles for a loss, and I think it was 2 sacks. But looking at the fine numbers, the detailed numbers, you see how big of an impact he actually made for the Huskies and how important he was for them on the field and how well he graded with PFF. Overall, you look at his tape and you see what type of player he is. He's a player that makes an impact on a defense. Now in the NFL, he'll probably have to bulk up a bit as he's a bit undersized for interior defensive line, but he has great hands, a great get off, and he'll have the ability to make an impact probably from day one in situational football. So I have each of these Husky pass rushers going first, going late first round, and that's due to the teams picking them. I could see those 5 teams from pick 26 to 32. 5 of those 6 teams need a pass rusher. That's why I put both Onwuzurike and Trown there, because that's what those teams need. Now, next up for the Huskies going is Elijah Molden. And whichever team picks him is going to be picking him based off his film and his just character ability. It's not going to be about his physical traits. He's at 5'10", 190 pounds. That's not the size and physicality that a defensive coordinator drills over. You put in his tape, though, in college film, that's just flat out great. That's what a defensive coordinator will drool over because he played great. He was an amazing college cornerback, defensive back, all around defender. His film speaks for itself. His accolades speak for themselves. He was All Pac-12 First Team 2020 and 2019. 2020, he was also PFF's Pac-12 Player of the Year. He may have only ran a 4.59 at his pro day, which some people could dock him for that, but you got to look deeper than that. He had an injured hamstring, I believe it was. He didn't run the shuttle because of that. He ran the 40. He just wanted to do it, see what he could do. Didn't put up the best number, but he was injured. So in order to draft him, you want to look at his film. And I could easily see a team falling in love with him from that. And because of that athleticism trait and the size, he probably won't be going first round. So I'm thinking second round for him. And whichever team gets him in that second round is going to get an absolute steal. It's pretty tough to predict where a corner like him will go because there's so many corners that are probably going to go in the NFL draft. They always go a bunch. That's a popular position always. But I think a team that actually is an ideal fit for Molden would be the Kansas City Chiefs. Molden is very similar in his skill set to Tyrann Mathieu. You put both those guys out on the field at the same time, and it could cause the QB some problems with their ability to roam around, jump these underneath routes, and then also come up and play physical football, tackling the running back. Excuse me. But the issue with the Chiefs is they don't pick until pick 58. So I really wouldn't be shocked if Molden's already gone by then or long gone. A team that I think might have a good opportunity to get him is at number 44, the Cowboys. Who the Cowboys, their secondary hasn't really looked great in recent years or in a while. So you could plug Molden in and really help that out. I know the Cowboys did sign a couple of defensive backs, including Keanu Neal. in the offseason, but just adding to that secondary could be helpful for the Cowboys. The last Husky out of this bunch is Keith Taylor, another cornerback who is kind of opposite of Molden. Taylor is 6'3", 195 pounds. So unlike Molden, he has ideal size for the position. However, also unlike Molden, he doesn't have the best tape. Molden had amazing film coming out of college. Keith Taylor doesn't. He never really broke through for the Huskies. He had 0 interceptions. He'd get beat in coverage at times. But Taylor did really what helped him rise up to this position that he's on the draft boards now is his great Senior Bowl performance and Pro Day performance helped him shine. And the question then is going to be how much do teams value the most recent numbers that he's seen from him with the Pro Day and Senior Bowl performance versus his whole college career? How much do they weigh each one of those individual things with where he goes? Overall, I think his size and just his performance that he's shown in recent history at the Pro Day and his Senior Bowl is going to put him in the late second, early third round talk. And really an ideal spot for him, I think, is Green Bay, pick 62. The Packers have a guy that the Huskies know all too well in Kevin King already. He's on a 1-year, $6 million deal. And the other corner opposite of King is, of course, Jair Alexander, an absolute shutdown corner. Great guy. But he is then coming up on his contract extension time. They picked up his 5th-year option. I believe it's going to be like next offseason when they sign Jair Alexander to a huge contract extension. The Packers are going to be wanting to save money somewhere. So getting a corner like Keith Taylor on a rookie contract, let him learn behind guys like Jair Alexander, a guy like Kevin King, who's very similar in physical traits, being 6'3" as well. And maybe Keith Taylor can develop into something and turn into a great corner. But yeah, I think pick 62 for the Packers could be good for him. All right, so getting into my final topic of the game or of the day. It's looking at the NFL still and which Huskies are going to be taking a leap. Predicting which Huskies have a breakout year it's tough to do, but I do see a few candidates that have great potential as well as a great opportunity to break out. And that's really what you need. You need two things. You need to have the ability to do so, the skill, but then you also have to have the potential and be in a place where you can break out. Now, a guy I think that falls into both those categories is Darrell Daniels. He was a tight end for UW from 2013 to 2016. He then went undrafted before being signed by the Colts, where he barely played his first year. He ended up actually being traded to the Seahawks and then waived a few weeks later, signed back with them on the practice squad before eventually being called up due to an injury. Spent a month on the active roster before being cut again. He was actually claimed off waivers by the Arizona Cardinals. That was November 26th, 2018. And then he spent the rest of the year with the Cardinals. And the 2019 season, he was on the Cardinals still. It was actually a weird thing. He was waived, put on the practice squad, and then promoted to the active roster for the Cardinals 3 different times that year. So he's really been through a lot. Adversity he's faced it. He's gotten through, and now 2020 season, he had his best year. He showed glimpses of being a great tight end. He didn't have the biggest numbers, 8 catches, 92 yards, 1 touchdown. So not eye-popping at all. But, I mean, he spent most of the year being the third-string tight end and didn't get the most looks. But when he did get the looks, he came through and caught the ball. He had 2 excellent plays. The first of which, you can't really find it online, or at least I couldn't in my little bit of searching I did for it, but I remember it pretty clearly because I'm a Cardinals fan. So I just remember that play. It was late in the game. It was either 3rd or 4th down. It was a short yardage situation. Might have actually been against the 49ers now that I'm thinking about it. But so Kyler Murray, the Cardinals quarterback, kind of rolled to the left. Daniels was running kind of a 5-yard out route, and Kyler put it on him slightly behind him, I think it was, but and Daniels also had a corner kind of tight coverage on him, but Daniels managed to get his hands on it, held onto the ball through contact, got the first down, moved the chain, showing off his strong hands. Now, the next display of strength he showed was one where you can find. It was against the Dolphins. You just got to search Darrell Daniels touchdown because it was his only touchdown last year, I think second of his career. But on this play, it was an amazing catch. It was, let's see, it was 12 minutes left in the third quarter. The Cardinals were in the red zone, I think 21-yard line. Kyler Murray rolled out to the right. Daniels was running a skinny flag. It was very slightly faded to the corner of the end zone. He had a cornerback underneath him and over top of him, and Kyler Murray kind of rushed the pass. Maybe didn't see the corner underneath him as he had a guy flying at him. Might have been Kyle Van Noy blitzing. So he had to offload it to him quickly. And that underneath corner got both his hands on the ball, but Darrell Daniels just simply ripped it away from him and took it, scoring the touchdown. Huge play for that game. Huge play for Daniels, just showing off his strength and his receiver capability. So those plays really just highlighted Daniels' ability to catch the ball. And then also Daniels at 6'4", 6'3", 230 pounds. He's got good enough size where he can be a blocking tight end as well. And I think that with the Cardinals losing Dan Arnold, who's their main receiving tight end last year, Darrell Daniels can kind of fill in that void and might have the potential to really take a big leap this upcoming season. Another guy who I think has the potential to take a big leap for former Huskies is Vita Vea. Vita Vea's already had kind of a decent career so far. He came into the league in the 2018 NFL draft. He was selected 12th overall by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that rookie season, he got plenty of playing time. I think he had about 28 tackles. And then 2019, he started all 16 games, finished with 35 tackles, 12 QB hits, 3 passes batted down. And then he also actually became the heaviest person to catch a touchdown pass in the NFL at 347 pounds. In 2020, however, Vea missed most of the year as he broke his right leg and ankle in week 5. So he missed most of the year, devastating for him. He did return for the Super Bowl and did make a tackle, but overall a disappointing 2020 season for him. And that's why the 2021 season is going to be huge for him. He has to prove his durability, I think. As coming out of college, he did not participate in the combine drills due to it was a hamstring injury, I think it was. And then actually in training camp his rookie year, he strained his calf, missed all of preseason and the first 3 regular season games. Stayed healthy his second year, 2019. However, 2020, as I said above, he broke his leg and ankle, missed most of that season. It's really key for Vea is going to be staying healthy so that he can reach his potential. And let me tell you, and all Husky fans know this, Vea has huge potential, not just because of his size at 6'4", 347 pounds, built like an absolute tank. He's just got skill as well, and he's a great interior defender. Now, a couple of other guys who may be able to take a leap is John Ross and Dante Pettis, wide receivers for the Giants. It's really going to be heavily determined for them on injuries, as they both have injury histories in the NFL, which has held them back, especially John Ross, who, when healthy, has shown that amazing speed and capability to get past defenders and make huge plays. But now that just about does it for all the time I have today. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you learned something new. Once again, I'm Nathan Mathisen. You can follow me on Twitter with the @ that you see on screen right now. Now, I'm just a small part of Dash Sports family. So if you'd like to meet the rest of the crew, check out our website, dashsportstv. Dot, or yeah, that's where you can go to find as many clips, quips, tips, rips, as terrible jokes, and as many full episodes as you can stand, all in one place, all for free. Dashsports.tv. Thank you for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you very much.